Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live episode of Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things. I'm your host, Carrie Roberts, and my guest today is Ian Utile. Welcome, Ian. Thanks for being here.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. It'll be fun to chat, get to know each other better. Maybe some people be watching now or later. You know, maybe my great grandkids are watching. Matthew, Jill, I love you. Sorry I'm not there.
I love it. Yes, we were just talking that you and I have met at actually a couple events, and we see each other in passing, and now it's good that we get to actually have a full conversation. Yeah. And so I want to start with you. You've been in tech for a long time, but I want to go back for a moment. So you, kind of in that high school, college age or so, your first job was actually in carpentry. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so tell me what that was like, because that's so different from what you do now. And why did you decide to do that kind of at a young age?
So my dad is a carpenter, framing general contractor. My mom is a real estate agent. So neither have ever had a job.
Oh, did we lose you for a second? So it looks like we lost him for just a second. Ian froze for a moment. So we are here live with Ian Utile. He is talking about kind of his journey coming into entrepreneurship and all. So we are going to see if we can get him to come back for a second. Let's try again. All right, so he's coming to us from California today. He has been an entrepreneur and in tech for a long time. He's going to be talking about kind of his journey through everything. And we're just going to check to see if we can get him back on. When we do live, it's always entertaining because we don't know, how people are coming in and whatnot. We've had people kind of all over the world from here. So we're going to have him come back on in just a moment. But as I was saying, so Ian has been in entrepreneurship and tech. Some of you know him from voice technology. He's been in the space for a long time. And so he's going to be talking about his journey kind of all the way through. All right, Ian, we lost you for a second. You're back.
Well, if that happens, that's very rare. If that happens,
that's okay.
Otherwise, I'd be up in the treehouse. We'd be hanging out in the treehouse together. I came down here to plug into the hardwire line. You asked me about carpentry.
Yeah, so let's go back. Yeah, so your first job was in carpentry. So let's talk about that first.
Yeah, so all I've known when I grew up was entrepreneurship in the context of construction and real estate. And so as a young kid, my parents both came from impoverished childhoods, and kind of slowly built something. But when I was a child, we still didn't have anything. And it was just a matter of hey, here's a kid that can move wood from this pile to this pile. He can, dig a hole and fill it up to keep him busy and out there on the job site. So I was out there at a young age and became a carpenter and loved it. Super edifying to build physical things, incredibly gratifying to build something, leave, and then go by that place and see families living there generation after generation. And so that's been a cool part that both is very present in the day when you put a wall up, I built that, I did that, or at the end of a project and kind of the legacy of it. So I love carpentry. I would have kept doing carpentry if I felt a little bit more challenged mentally. Although I love being physical, I also like the mind to be exercising. And although carpentry and being a journeyman carpenter, doing complicated things like building stairs or roofs is very challenging mentally, it wasn't something that I felt was a long-term thing. So I left carpentry to go into technology.
And so you have been an entrepreneur for a long time. Did you know at a young age that you were going to have a business and that's what you wanted to do? Or is it something that just happened? What was kind of your first taste of entrepreneurship? Because if it didn't really come from your family, where did you hear about it? Where did you learn about it? Why did you want to do it?
Yeah. So, you could say it came from my family. That'd be fair. So I think right when I got cut off, I was saying, both my parents have never had a job, they've never had a boss, and they've never had a business partner. So all I knew was entrepreneurship. The thought of having like a 9-to-5 job, I just have no context for it outside of friends. So I've only done things independently my whole life. I've had some like relationships where I like was a contractor or committed to a company, even some sense where it was kind of like employment, but 80% of my income came from my productivity. So I've always been very independent, and that's just kind of natural. Like it'd be super strange for me to be told what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I resonate with that quite a bit. Yes. So, but
Nice,
why?
I wish there was somebody who would be like, I'll be your boss. I'll tell you what to do.
Yeah. But so why technology? Why was the interest in entrepreneurship and technology versus anything else?
Yeah, my family has lived in the San Francisco Bay Area for 10 generations. So deep roots back to the founding of the city of San Jose. And so because of the family ties and the fact that we've been here for such a long time, obviously I have relationships outside of where I live in Santa Cruz, in Silicon Valley, San Jose, San Francisco. So I think part of it was just like, I live here, like geographic location. Our family is from here. I'm as local as you can get. And so that opens different opportunities maybe a little bit from time to time. And I also have always thought about the future, like the fictional stories I loved to read when I was younger was Isaac Asimov, things of that nature, right? So I've always been very fascinated both by the distant future, thinking about what happens when I'm gone with lineage family and building and technical things, but also not just kind of looking out, but just thinking about, okay, a human can have an idea that doesn't exist. And that human can declare that idea. It's the one thing that's most significantly different from us and animals, right? Animals love, animals have anger, they have pain, they seem to even have embarrassment, they have relationships, they die for one another. Like animals are extraordinary. They aren't people that have vision for the future like we do. And so the thought that you could have an idea, say the idea, gather people around that idea, and actually manifest that into reality is the part of the futurist sport I enjoy most, the present one.
Yeah, and I mean, you've done a lot of different companies, and what I do want to focus on a little bit is the company that was the Inc. 500 ranked one of your companies as the #1 fastest growing private company in San Jose, California, because of basically almost a 4,000% growth rate. And then it was acquired by a private equity firm in 2019. That's something I think a lot of people strive for. If there's somebody that wants to own a business, they not only want to own a business, they want to grow it so much and then be able to sell it and either have that money or do the next thing. So I'd love for you to take us through the journey of that. Like what is the company? How did it start? Kind of the very beginnings of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a super fun story. In 2007, I had gone through, almost a decade of the Silicon Valley craziness. By that time, I was making a lot of money. I was like in my mid-20s, and I was making like $1,000 a day, which is a tremendous amount of money, 15 years ago, and especially that age. And I think that like it was okay. That's the end of a season. I'm gonna stop that. I got married super young too, at 21. So I'd been married several years, didn't have kids. Okay, I'm done here. Let's do your music. So we did my wife's music for like 3.5, 4 years, and we traveled around the world, and we did all these crazy things. Had 30 people live at our house, and it was wild. When we came back up north, I felt like a sense of like, I'm supposed to build a tech company from the ground up in Silicon Valley, maybe not just once, but like that's definitely part of my invitation. You can call it destiny or purpose or whatever you want to call it. And so that's how Kukui started. I met a guy, we were new to town, lived about 45 minutes east of where I'm at now. And we wanted to make some new friends. So we went to kind of like a spiritual gathering of people at a friend's house. And there was a bunch of couples there and just kind of get to know each other, encourage each other. And the guy asked me what I do, and I was trying to nail down a job at Facebook or Google. So I had friends at both companies in 2010, and they both were interested in having me come in to do a very specific biz dev thing, and kind of in those, which would have been fun. And so this guy sends me this like 8-page email, and he's the founder and CEO. I was the co-founder and president when we started it. And it's like, I have this feeling that this describes you. And he kind of like describes who I was, like my character and how I do things. And he goes, if this is true, which is just like a gut feeling, I have been looking for you for like 3.5 years. And then we went and saw a Facebook movie. We went to the Apple DevCon or whatever it was in a day. And at the end of that, we're like, well, let's just give it 6 months. And so we started the company out of his house, started with real estate, built software product for real estate, realized it wasn't going to be a good fit. We couldn't compete with Trulia and Zillow. And so I just went out with an iPad and I just walked up to people. It's just like this. This is Ian starting a successful tech company. Here with good news. And they're all like, oh, here with good news. Like, hey, listen, let me ask you. And what I would do is I would go on Yelp and I'd look up this company's top competitors. I'd name drop their competitors. I'd figure out the software that these companies used. I'd name drop the software competitors. I would build some rapport in 30 seconds by knocking on their door when I'm the last human they ever want to see. And then they'd soften. And then I'd be like, let me just ask you. And I'd share this future vision, which was basically Kukui version 4, 6 years after we started the company. And I'd basically give this Kukui version 4 vision. And I'm like, so basically I'm picking one company like yours in your town. It can be you or name drop from this company, name drop from this company. So if I leave, it won't be you. So are you in or not? And then I basically charge people $1,500 a month. I told them I needed 3 months to deliver a product we hadn't built. And so it was a way that and I charged a first last month payment. So I was able to get like $7,500 from a company in 4 months, get to know that company, and we'd start customizing our software for them. And so that's how Kukui started. That was the beginning of things. It was at my friend's house. We eventually got an office, built out a local staff of 2 dozen people, built out a large staff of over 100 people in Europe. Which was a big competitive advantage for us, figured out our customer, how much money it cost to get that customer, how long we kept that customer, like all the different financial metrics, never raised money from like normal institutional investment. We just were profitable, like just by $1 or a few cents every quarter. We were just barely profitable. And we grew every quarter for 8.5 years. We grew our revenue to $11 million annual recurring revenue. So what that means is we did about $900,000 a month. And that's kind of how you're judged as a software company. And it was a really something that I am so thankful to be a part of launching. And that the role that I had in the company for the years that I was there, and the ability to stay a friend and an advisor, and eventually find our investment banker and be able to help us take that next logical step where we take on capital, take on wisdom, and can scale from $11 million a year to 50 million or billion or whatever we end up being capable of in our industry. And our software was pretty simple. It ended up becoming version 4, like the thing I told people we were going to build. I'm like, now this doesn't exist, by the way. I'm just telling you what we're going to build when you tell us how to build. Like, you tell us what you need, and we have the tech people. And it's a special story. I still have a lot of friends, and I'm very fortunate that many of my friends that helped me start that company, Kukui, are with me today and helping me build other things. And so it's nice to have the same team to go to war with, because it's not always war. A lot of business is laughter and patience, and there's a pace.
Yeah, and you said 2007. Is that what you said?
That's when I left the Valley, did music with my squad for 3.5 years, and then I came back. We started in 2010. Started in 2010, exploded in growth. I left in 2013 due to an injury. And also I had replaced myself several times over. And so it was like, I probably should go start another thing because I'm good at starting things. And then the company, we hit the Inc. list in 2015. Then we started entertaining lightly, kind of how could we take on capital investment, like what's the options, being acquired. And then finally we got serious about it in 2017. And it took almost 2 years, took over 18 months. And the whole process, every process of an idea to getting customers to getting a team and being a real company, and then expanding, and then all the different things that happen in growing your revenue and managing your expenses and thinking about the next step. And then actually getting a transaction, because companies are not sold, companies are bought. You see, I can't sell a company to somebody. An organization has to want to buy a company, which completely changes the dynamic. And so everything is so much harder than people, myself, ever imagine. And just like having kids, right? Like you have a child and you're like, was the hardest thing ever, right? I have 2 children. I have a 7 and 11-year-old, 2 boys. And the second time catches you by surprise. It's like, how could it be so hard? It's like, well, you had a kid 4 years ago. And that's what entrepreneurship is like. It's so much more difficult than people might imagine it's going to be.
Yeah, and I want to go back for anyone watching. If you have questions, you can type them in the comments and we'll have Ian answer them. So a lot of people want to own a business. And I'm curious, when you were doing this, especially in the beginning, were there moments where you were like, I don't know if this is going to work, or this is way harder, or maybe this isn't the right thing? And if so, how did you kind of decide to push through to continue?
My decision making is quite a bit different than others. So, I mean, I can say for me, I just don't I don't have a quit button, and so I don't really contemplate or entertain the thoughts. I mean, not to say I don't stop things. At some point, you have to take that thing out back and shoot it in the head, and you're done. And sometimes you shouldn't, but you did, and too bad, and you move on. And sometimes you should have, and you didn't, and you suffered longer. But the reason I say I process or make decisions differently, regarding what you're asking, is, so much of my decision making is a response to the present situation. Not that I'm strategic, right? I make plans, but so much of my decision making is a primal gut response to what I'm facing in the moment. And this permeates everything. And that's why before we started, I mentioned I've never had 2 days that are similar. I'm 39 years old. And let's just take coronavirus. Okay. I live in a treehouse. My treehouse is small, right? This is like my office where I can plug in the internet. And, that's a tiny place. You'd think I would get a regiment, right? Because I'm home for 2 months. You think I'd get there's not a single, 2 months, same place. I have not had a similar day. So that's why I'm I don't know how to answer that question in a way that's relevant, because other people don't really function that way. The amount of stress that I emotionally bear to live the way that I live is unfathomable for most people. But I have a personality disorder. It's called a zero stress personality.
Is that true? I feel like you don't ever feel a sense of stress at any moment in time.
No, I do. I do. I mean, I have stressors.
Yeah.
And there might be outside sense of anxiety, but it's the agreement with those things that I've made I both have a natural characteristic. I'm so thankful. And then hard work, 1,000 hours of counseling, incredibly dedicated to self-awareness, realizing okay, how can I build resistance to anxiety, to fear, to stress, to insecurity, while also being honest with myself and not pretending like everything's okay with some sort of false optimism, which is the real tough balance for really uh, optimistic people and positive people to do, is to strike that balance of like honesty with oneself, with difficulties that are being faced, and facing those head on, and then choosing to see things in the best possible light, assuming the best, not believing the worst, over and over and over again, for people and for situations. So yeah, but as far as stress and anxiety, I've taken a lot of personality tests, and like the ocean test, there's an anxiety meter. And so it goes from 0 to 100, like you're the most anxious person in the world, and negative 100. So most of my readings were kind of like a normal entrepreneur, except for that one, I was like a negative 99. And so the gal I was working with, she's like, you have a personality disorder. You don't feel any stress? And I'm like, cool. Thanks for letting me know it's official.
But where do you think that's genetic? Do you think like were you like that as a kid, or you think, like you said, that's from training yourself, learning about yourself, just experiences in life?
I mean, certainly part genetic, but the genetics would quickly vanish the moment I decided to agree with fear, insecurity, shame, condemnation, guilt, anxiety. If I decide that those thoughts that try to come into my consciousness, if I decide that those are thoughts that I'm going to think about, entertain, have them over for dinner, have some coffee with them, and really like, what do you think about that? I should be afraid. I should have a panic attack right now. Really? Like that is the unconscious, subconscious thing that a lot of people are going through. Is there is an option there. Now, am I more genetically disposed to a happier, a positive, optimistic demeanor? I think so. I mean, it sure seems that way. But I think that it's work, and it's a choice, and there's a sacrifice to be made. So there's a consequence for not responding to stressors. And one of the worst consequences that I face is the way it impacts other people. And so one of the things I have to be most careful about is that I am mindful of being empathetic to others, because my life is similar to jumping out of an airplane with no parachute. So that's fun. Like, it's fun. It's adrenaline rushing and super fulfilling in so many ways. Just because I'm having fun doesn't mean my two boys, that my decision making doesn't impact them, or the people I work with, right? Strangers. I mean, so whatever. So I'm always trying to be mindful that, like, okay, there's a balance to all this. Like, and that's the whole thing of, like, that's why I like what you do on Wednesdays. You have professional psychologists come in and try to help people on your podcast, which is a bit different than people telling their stories, kind of like what we're doing right now for Mondays. And for those that aren't like avid Carrie fans, Fridays, she shares all of her own gems.
Thank you.
And super encouraging. And so, I think that, there's a lot there, but I probably should let you ask more questions.
So, well, I think, like you said, I mean, one of the things that I've learned from doing this show long enough is that everybody is totally different, right? Everybody responds to things different. Everybody has their own way of living, their own way of being, different mindsets. There's no one way to do or be. But what is your advice for somebody that's saying, like, wow, I am somebody, maybe they're super anxious, or they have a business, and especially during this time, which we're talking, in April 2020 here during coronavirus time, and they're feeling stressed out about their business, but they want to do it. Like, do you have any words of wisdom or advice that you could give, especially people that are owning a business or starting a business right now, of how to deal with some of those stressors and anxieties?
Yeah. So if a person, like, if you're there, you're watching, I'm loving you right now. I know we're not just the two of us. We're a community for a moment. Or maybe you're watching this afterwards. You deal with anxiety, fear, you're overwhelmed. Maybe it's even worse because you're locked at home. Maybe the challenges, like I really, really can't fathom some of the challenges that people are going through. And so how do you deal with anxiety? and regarding business, like you have a company, you're an entrepreneur, it's a side hustle, or you have a really important role at an organization. So how do you deal with it? What's my advice? My advice is that you are honest with yourself. So you can either press through it and get through what you're facing and then move beyond it and maybe not have to face that same situation again. Because a lot of what we face has to do with us growing in our character and evolving. You can freeze, you can drink, you can smoke, you can tune out on news, you can play games. And I have nothing against drinking and smoking. I probably would have been a pastor if I didn't cuss and drink and smoke so much. I disqualified myself over and over. So, but I do, but I'm a spiritual man. So if that's the case, if you're just like life on pause, I'm not pressing through, I just want to like tune out. That's cool. Like that's one reason why people are graced to have escapism, entertainment. And now we get it any form or fashion we want for as long as we want, anytime we want, almost always free. It's really unique. But if that's what you're doing, if you're pressing the medicate myself button with news, with social media, with doing videos, whatever it is, like I'm pausing, I'm not pressing through, I'm just going to, then at least just know that and don't choose to feel guilty, bad, shamed. Don't compound your fear or anxiety with guilt and starting to beat yourself up. Like, okay, this is what I'm doing. Like, there's a reason why I'm escaping. I don't want to face it. Like, that's it. But most importantly, if you're actively facing that and running away from it, you're not putting it on pause, you're not facing it. You're just like, I'm never dealing with that. Like, I'm going to pretend it doesn't exist. I'm just going to run away from it. Well, my encouragement would be, you're probably going to face the same thing in a different situation pretty soon. Because most of what we face in relationships, in business, in finances, in health, most of what we face has to do with us making decisions that put ourselves in that situation that allows us to overcome a thing that we've never overcome before and become who we really are. And so if that's the case, if most of the hurdles and challenges and trials that we're faced with, that we're invited to overcome and push through, or to pause, right? Drink a 6-pack, pause, go smoke a joint, pause, whatever it is. And nothing against that. It's all good. I'm just saying, but be mindful and be aware, like that's what I'm doing. But the thing I'm most concerned about is people that run away from it, because most likely you'll run away from that relationship and you'll find a person with the exact same situation pretty soon. You'll run away from that business. You'll start another business, get invited into another business, somehow become a partner with another business, same exact situation. And you don't want to become a person that when fear and anxiety comes, that you don't push through, you don't pause and wait until you're ready to face it, but you run away pretending like that situation with different people, different geographies, different timelines, different things, but basically the same situation is probably going to come at you. And at some point, you are made to overcome it. So sooner is sometimes, not always, but sometimes better than
later. Yeah, no, I like that breakdown. And I just want to show, JoJo says, this is awesome. So we thank her for watching. So no, I think that's a really interesting thing, to either pause or push through rather than avoid. When you, this business was sold or taken over, where were you at that point? Were you like, awesome, I have money, I'm just going to hang out, I'm good? Were you like, I'm ready to start the next business? Did you feel like, oh my gosh, that's been my identity for so long, what do I do? What were kind of the emotions when that happened in order to go to the next step?
Yeah, so I dealt with all that in 2013. So I started the company with my friend in 2010 at his house. I recruited the first couple dozen people. And with the help of a team, anything that I accomplished, that we accomplished, was an us thing. We collectively, under my leadership, accomplished $1 million of annual recurring revenue, our first 100 clients. Like, it was so special. And that was probably the closest I had ever gotten to my identity being tied to my work. And so I ruptured my Achilles tendon at the office, riding a skateboard. Because, how can a man from Santa Cruz not ride a skateboard when he's up on 100 feet up and glass windows everywhere? That makes sense. It made a lot of sense to me. Ruptured my Achilles tendon. I'd already replaced myself with our executives. And so it just was like the conclusion is it's better for me to leave and go do my own thing. So since then, 2013, when I left, I've started myself half a dozen or so organizations. I've helped several dozen of my friends start companies. I've been an advisor and in some cases like an official entrepreneur in residence, which is a unique role in many organizations. And so I dealt with all the identity issues in 2013 when I kind of left abruptly and separated myself from that, and then built like a new framework, kind of gave myself a new operating system. Like I used to think of work this way, and that was too closely tied to my identity. I don't like the consequence because when it was removed from my life, I felt like something personal was ripped away from me rather than an outside thing that I was building and enjoying and loving. And so I made different decisions moving forward from there. And so as far as when the company sold, what did I do? Like not a single thing changed. Nobody knew my company had sold. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't make any difference in my calendar, my action. I already had been about 1.5 years into the development of my current company, which I've been working on for 2.5 years, which is very, very important to me. And so, I don't know that it really changed much, but again, I'm not moved by a lot of things outward.
Yeah.
It just doesn't really move me most of the time. I'm a crier. You probably could ask me a question, I'd start crying. Man, I'm moved by emotion and love and pain and pleasure and story, but I'm not really moved by deadlines and pressures. Being there, or debt being there, or people being faithful, or people being unfaithful. It's like life is hard for everybody.
Yeah. I want to bring up another thing because the first time I had met you was at a voice technology event, Voice Summit, last year. And you came up on a hoverboard and I remember everyone was like, oh, that's Ian. And I was like, who is that? I was like, I'm a brand person. And I was like, this guy is owning his brand. You were on that hoverboard, you have the glasses you have on, you had like kind of bold colors. And you just drew attention to yourself. And actually at one point it was really cool. There's some kids at the event and they were like, what is that? Really excited. Then I saw that you did, I think, some advising for hoverboard, which now makes sense. But I'm curious, you said you were into skateboards. When did that kind of persona come out of like, now I'm the guy? Like, honestly, if I see you walking on your feet, I'm shocked. So when you are on this hoverboard and you have
I literally get it.
Persona.
I literally get it so I can move my trash cans. No, I'm working on like developing all the properties. So everything is hoverboard friendly. Okay. So when I was 16, I probably started skating young. I was never good. I was always terrible. I was always a big guy. So I was like 200 pounds in junior high school. And so big guys don't fall great on skateboards. So like I had kind of like that mentality, like we're going to have fun. We're going to use it for transportation. Might ollie over a curb from time to time, but like, that's about it. Ain't no skate parks. Like, no, homie doesn't play that. So I didn't get hurt skateboarding, fortunately. That wasn't really an option for me. It was just transportation. When I was 16, I owned 2 1965 Barracudas, kind of like the 65 Mustang, but not as popular. Cool, like long glass black back window. And they never ran great. So I almost always had a skate. And when I got rid of one, I got another one. And it was just like, I basically was skating all the time. So that's kind of the beginning of things. I love snowboarding. And so snowboarding and skateboarding, both of those things have a moment of ecstasy. Okay. A skateboard, especially a longboard, the moment of ecstasy is right after you did the final push with your foot. And now you're going fast enough that you can start to carve on the concrete. And there's that moment for 3 seconds, 20 seconds. And it's like this ecstatic emotional feeling. And with snowboarding, it's for those 3 minutes between getting off the lift and getting back to the lift. And that 3-minute moment has different moments of like this feeling of like, I feel spiritually and emotionally and physically like juiced right now. The hoverboard that I brought to market, which is called the GeoBlade, and now I primarily ride the One Wheel, which was our competitor that has won the game. They've done an amazing job, Kyle and his team at One Wheel, and they're a local Santa Cruz company. And so that product gives me that ecstatic feeling every moment I ride it. And it's because you control everything about the board. Like the only way I can describe the way it feels, like if you've never ridden it, like I ride it, like if you get on it for the first time, you're like, oh, this is hard. This takes balance. Like I'm never going to, and like I've been riding boards for a long time. But if you watched Avatar, the blue man, right? He's all handicapped. He gets the blue body. And then she says, you have to pick a dragon. The dragon picks you. You jump and you tackle the dragon, you jump on the dragon and fly the dragon. And he looks at her. He's like, how do I fly the dragon? And she's like, you just plug in and it just happens. That is what it feels like when I ride that board. It feels like I've plugged into an extension, a mechanical extension of my consciousness of what I want to do. If I want to lean left or right, go fast or slow. And it's one of the many reasons I'm so grateful to be born to now. I was born in 1981, so I'm an elder millennial, or one of the little punk Gen Xers almost. I call the Gen X generation the FU generation. I definitely feel that way. Like that, kind of agitated feeling that generation feels. I kind of share that. But because I was an old millennial, I remember when pagers came out in junior high and like cell phones in high school, and I got a computer in college. Like I've seen it there was no technological impact on our life outside of like cars and planes and buildings, but like nothing like this, right? Now, seeing that technology hasn't just impacted giving me a supercomputer in my pocket that has 45,000 contacts that I can accomplish basically anything personally or professionally with. But in the same way that this has unlocked abundance for people in their personal communication or business abilities, a product like the hoverboard or the One Wheel unlocks a ability that we have in our bodies because it was mechanically built in a way that's really made for humans to have that ecstatic feeling like all the time, and not just the 3 minutes when you get off the lift when you snowboard, or the 20 seconds after you pump as hard as you can with your foot. So anyway, that gives you a little context. I never became a surfer. I just thought it was a lot of work. Getting wet and sandy, getting clean. That's a lot of work.
Ian, it's because when it comes to brand, I always talk about brand to me, it's not just a logo, which is what a lot of people think, but it's really about who you are and what you're about and who you're trying to serve. And just hearing that story alone tells me so much about yourself. And so it's an interesting thing because when you're at these events and you're using it, it does draw attention and people to come up to you, which is a really great brand and sales tactic in a sense. But it also, like you said, it's for you personally. It's a feeling. And I love that that's what you're talking about because it fits with your personality and with everything we're talking about, which I want to transition to some of the work that you're doing now with your company Attention Live. Kind of have gotten into this streaming space, video space, technology space. Can you talk about what that is and why that has kind of become like your new excitement for you within the workspace?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started a company with a team called Attention Live, ATTN.LIVE. I'm using my product right now. So you can see that I've been live streaming this podcast for 39 minutes. I didn't have to write the title or description. It's automatically written for me. And then you can see that I'm currently live on Alexa. So if you said to Alexa, open Attention Live, what channel, Ian Utile, you'd be hearing me in real time, me and Carrie. I'm also live on our YouTube audio channel. And then we're adding all these other voice devices and social media sites. So that's the company. Our vision was super simple. There's a major problem in the world. Okay, the problem is if you want to communicate to all the social media sites. Now, with this tool you're using right now, you can communicate if you have some technical things in place, right? Like a good microphone, a hardwired internet connection, and then you can stream, from what I understand, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. That's great, video. I can see that, but you can't stream on the voice devices. And then you also have some option, Anchor or something of that nature, that you're sending the podcast to the podcast platform. So we're an all-in-one tool. So with our tool, you can live stream. We call it live podcast. We're creating a new category that doesn't exist, live podcasting. You can live broadcast your voice to these voice devices. Nobody else in the world can do that. So that's something that we do. Nobody else does. But we also add the ability to live broadcast your voice with an image or a GIF image to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And then we send the archive out to the other platforms. And so what this does as a product is it eliminates the need for multiple hardware. Because at one point, I was traveling with 5 cell phones, 5 LTE cards. So I could go live on Facebook, right, on Twitter, on YouTube, on LinkedIn. And I had all these phones. And part of it, that was kind of a show, right? Like, hey, everybody, there's a problem. Yeah. Here to tell you about a problem. Cost me $5,000 for these 5 phones and $500 a month. I can't afford that. You can't afford that. But that's what it takes for me to say hello to everybody at the same time. And then I'd be like, and this solves a problem. Just one button.
And what's cool is like, so I am streaming this with something, but then you're streaming what I'm streaming, right, which you can't do with this platform. So I think that's pretty interesting too, that you can kind of pull from something else and push it out, which is great.
To be honest, I could actually take the RTMP feed that this product outputs, and I could run the RTMP feed through ours instead of using a separate device. And this device is on LTE, so it doesn't interfere with our hardwired or whatever. So Attention Live is about, business is about solving problems, making money. Right? I mean, for me, it's more about laughing and building teams and like building the future, but really that's what it comes down to. And so we're solving a huge problem. Content creators, they are struggling with distribution and struggling with ownership and automation. Like on all fronts, that's a really big deal for you and your peers, right? How do I distribute and who owns it and how do I monetize it? And is there any automation for any of this stuff anyways? Yeah. And so that's a problem. And we believe that our product solves that for content creators because it's any hardware, iOS, Windows, Android, doesn't matter what the software operating system is, any hardware. You're talking cell phone, watch, tablet, desktop, right? Eventually we'll be adding all the smart speakers, refrigerators and cars, right? The rings, the glasses. So any hardware, any software operating system, our software will work. And we're building in the voice interface. So instead of you tapping Attention Live and go live, you'll just say to our let's say, what do I not have in this room? Hey, Cortana, I don't have a room here. Hey, Cortana, open Attention Live. And then, okay, what do you want to do? Go live. And then you can just go live with your voice. So new category, live podcasting, doing things no other software can do. And approaching it in a way that people are talking about, but I don't see a lot of apps that are voice interface first. And so that's our approach. There's one other thing that we do. You can see this NFT thing right here. It just says NFT ERC 721.
Yeah.
So when that's clicked, it creates a token on the Ethereum blockchain. And that token then goes into a marketplace, which means with this right here, I now have proof of ownership and an automated way to either trade, license, or sell the content that I've created. And the content that's been created through our platform is an SRT transcription, an AAC audio file, and then a design that kind of encapsulates it. Again, that's a thing that nobody's done. So that's why I've worked on this for 2.5 years with some of my closest friends and most brilliant people in the world, because we're trying to create a category, live podcasting, with voice as the interface and blockchain as the integrated cloud of sorts to provide trustworthiness and lots of automation options for our clients. So for users, it's also a big deal because they don't want to have to watch video. I mean, the reality is it's super demanding. Anybody that's watching you and I right now, we are demanding a lot of things from them. Their undivided attention, if they're going to look at the screen, their bandwidth, right? And just those, let's just stop. Undivided attention and then bandwidth is a
Yeah.
big deal. So by providing audio as an alternate option or the only option, we now are giving them a passive consumption option that doesn't eat up bandwidth. As a content creator, same thing. Right now, you and I are having to stream our voice and our video in high def up to the cloud so that it can send it everywhere. But if we were just streaming only our voice together right now, then that would eliminate our bandwidth usage. And also it would make it less demanding for us. We don't have to go look in a mirror. We don't have to put on the only colorful shirt that we own, black.
It is. Do you know, Ian, it's so funny because I was just telling you before we got on this, I only started doing these videos probably a month and a half ago. And I love them, but the slight downside is like, you have to do your hair and makeup. You have to set something up. It's a little different. When I do just audio, I can be in my pajamas all day. So it does add a whole nother layer, and it's great to have video, but like, you're right, it's good to have that audio option and to be able to hear that from a live event or online interview like we're doing. I mean, that's a great opportunity to have. So I love that concept. One of the things you say about yourself is you're a futurist. What does that word mean to you when you say that? I mean, I kind of hear it across the board, but I'm curious how you define that.
Good question. Sometimes I make fun of myself. I call myself a fake futurist, but that is to be lighthearted about it. Now, I'm not a scientist. Okay, so I'm not a verified, certified futurist that is part of the scientific community that studies history, studies the present, and using data makes data-based decisions, studying history and the present, not based on your own personal experience, but objectively from the outside as a researcher and saying, based on the history and the present, objectively, because I have nothing to do with this, I'm just reporting data, this is what I believe the future is like. Now, that's an official futurist. So I'm not that. I am the other type of futurist. I'm a person that imagines a better future, talks about it, gets agreement with other human beings to join me in the development of it, attempts to develop it, fails or succeeds, and when succeeds, looks back and says, gosh, how crazy. I had that idea about the future, about a thing that didn't exist. And now that thing is in existence because of the hard work of all these people to manifest the vision that I had cast of what the future could be like. So that is futurist. Now we see this on scale, like massive scale, like an Elon Musk or a Steve Jobs, where as futurists, they've done a couple things. And part of what they've done is they've been super disciplined. And like, those are two of the most disciplined humans in the history of business, right?
Yeah.
Super duper disciplined, completely courageous, right? Like, they just don't care what anybody says, the government, the bank account, their employees, their board, they don't care. They already decided what the future is going to be like, and they're building it. It doesn't matter if the consumer wants it, they'll make the consumer want it. So to me, that's the entrepreneurial futurist category. And then you can look at people that take it to the furthest extreme, like a Musk or a Jobs. And then you look at people that squander that innate ability. So I think a thing for people to realize that all of us are basically hardwired to be a futurist. Like, you'll hear leadership coaches say, you're a leader, everybody's a leader. We're way more futurists, all of us, than leaders. Way more. Because if you get 50 people in a room and you say, who's in charge, and they don't know each other, few people are going to stand up. Now, they could be insecure, arrogant alpha people, or they could be genuine, followable, humble, yet confident leaders. But all 50 will not raise their hand and say, I'm the leader. There's going to be a few. But if you ask those 50 people, how many of you have an idea, a great idea? Like, all of them do. So everybody is hardwired to be a futurist. Now, the reason why I would, after a 20-year career, be willing to, in a cheeky way, but also in an authentic way, say, I am a futurist, is because of the track record, right? Like I've had so many ideas that have manifested into reality that at this point in my life, there is such a long line of things that have been accurately not just predicted, but built. I would never call myself a futurist if I was a non-scientific person that looked at things and said, this is what's going to happen. I only say it because I look at things, I say, what is the best possible scenario with content creation and content consumption? I know one hardware, one software, goes everywhere, has the authenticity and trustworthiness of blockchain, automates the ability for content creators to monetize, doesn't demand so much from content consumers, right? I start to build this idea. You go, who do I know that could help me build that? So then you start talking and then you get agreement. Oh my gosh, that's a great idea. We should totally do that. See, that is the path of having an idea as a futurist, ideas, declaring it, gathering people to agreement, and then beginning to manifest. That is what I talk about when I say that I'm willing to like put on LinkedIn, or I guess I put it everywhere now.
Mm-hmm.
I have a father, a friend, a futurist, and a founder.
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean by a futurist. I have an idea, I declare it, I gather people toward it, we all agree upon it, we build it till it exists. It was just a thing in my head, and now it's impacting business or lives or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I like that definition a lot. Ian, where can people connect with you if they want to learn more or they have questions? Where's the best place to do that?
They can text my cell phone. I've had the same number for 25 years. 831-566-9692. That's probably the best chance you got at getting my attention. 831-566-9692. I'm at Ian Utile everywhere on the internet. I was huge on MySpace before Facebook existed. I've been in the social media world for a long time. There's one time where I posted 5,000 times a day. I did.
I can imagine that.
1,000 times a day. It was like 8 Excel sheets, all going through 8 different softwares that then distributed those 5,000 posts across 100 channels I own on Facebook and Twitter. And we were getting 52 million impressions. So like I've been a social media guy, a little less now. I more just for viewing. But Ian Utile, I'm somewhat active everywhere. So, if you're on Twitter or LinkedIn, like happy to connect with you. I'm easy to get a hold of one way. It's easy for you to get a hold of me. Okay. You can find my number anywhere.
Yes.
Are you persuasive enough to get me to respond?
I like it. Ted just said big on MySpace. I think that's funny. So the last question I ask all of my guests, Ian, for this show is, what is one word or quote or mantra that you try to live by every single day? Yeah,
grace. Super easy. Super, super easy. Grace. Grace with yourself first. And that includes not just good thoughts or giving yourself mercy or believing in yourself, but also having grace with how you're tackling everything, like just to be kind and loving to yourself, because then it's much easier to have grace with everybody outward. Grace is the opposite of what you see on CNN and Fox. So for context, what is grace? Spiritual people will have a certain definition that's a little bit different than people that are more scientific. That's an easy way to put it. But they basically mean the same thing when they're talking about grace, right? When I say it's the opposite of like Fox and CNN, those are the two most tribalistic expressions of anti-grace. Everything is about glorifying their team for bad reason and demonizing the other team. And so that's the opposite of grace. To have grace and to experience grace is to be at peace, at joy, to feel love, to feel loving, to accept, to be content, to be thankful and grateful in your circumstances, and with other people, to extend that same grace to other people. So grace is, always will be, my word of the day.
I love it. Thank you so much, Ian, for sharing your journey and your story. And I look forward to seeing more of what you do with everything else. So thank you.
Yes, so fun.